Hello, I'm Michael Nicks-Erickson, and welcome to the Foodivist, a continuing series of videos dedicated to our food, what is in our food, and who controls our food, and the laws surrounding our food. As always, I want to encourage you to rate and subscribe to this channel below. So I'm just going to start by saying that the processed food you have in your refrigerator, or your cabinet, or maybe even your hand right this second is very addictive. Once upon a time, there wasn't anything that was going to get between me and my hamburger helper. And let me say, my goodness, I just love the HH. Just for fun, here's a snapshot of the ingredients label. Yellows 5 and 6. How wholesome. But I grew past that love of hamburger helper and I moved into things like soy milk. I was being healthy, you understand. I also dropped sodas and bought some brand that used cane sugar, and I bought cereal that had a picture of some animal and it was called Moms. Was it knockoff Cocoa Pebbles? Yes. I was convinced that I was looking after my health and bypassing the corporate food chain and that none of this food was processed. Well, one day I found out that Moms stood for Malto Meal and it was owned by Post Holdings. My relationship with processed foods, from hamburger helper to oat milk to Mom's brand of cereals, has adjusted and shifted over the years. I've gotten to the point now that no matter what it says on the box, I just assume it's a marketing ploy. I accept that the purpose of this product is to make a buck for its producer, and I realize that I am ultimately responsible for my health, and it falls to me to do my own research. Now, I still do buy food items that come in cans and boxes, but not as much as I used to. So in preparation for this video, I Googled the processed food industry, and I just gotta say I love this description that I found, and here it is. Food processing is transforming fresh, raw food into food products that are easily recognized, regularly consumed, and loved by all. Think on this. What they call the US food processing industry brought in about $750 billion in revenue. The products you see in your grocery store, from the soy milk to the Wonder Meat to the lean cuisine, all exist to do one thing, and that is to turn a profit. And you know what? That's okay. That is their prerogative. And from the government standpoint, I'm sure in their eyes, it's a win-win. What I mean with that is this industry employs about 3.5 million people. It contributes to the economy as food is the third largest household expense, and it keeps the population fat and happy. Yes, I said fat and happy. Yes, I said fat and happy. You've probably heard that saying that a revolution can start after 3 days of no food. So I think governments really across the world are less interested in the quality of the food and more interested in the ease in which that food is produced, its shelf life, and does it keep the cost of food down, and is the food easily accessible. But now we turn to you. I don't think that your priorities match that of the government and the industry. I believe that most of us want to eat the healthiest food that we can, and that we want it to taste good. That seems fair to me. Unfortunately, the skills required to prepare healthy and tasty food have disappeared from our culture. I know that I'm trying to develop those skills myself, but that takes time, that takes energy, and it is a little difficult and a little intimidating. We were convinced by, showy marketing slogans that we're too busy or too important to spend time preparing meals, and that we are buying back time by buying pre-cooked meats or instant rice or frozen orange juice because we're just so busy and we're just so important. And referring back to what I said a few moments ago, I believe that our government was fine with all this because it helped achieve the goals of any presidential administration: low-cost food, a fed population, and economic stimulus. But how is the population doing years or even decades after eating processed foods? There were 2 recent studies that found that ultra-processed foods lead to an increased risk of cancer as well as other non-communicable diseases such as obesity. The study, which is linked below, found that even though there is an increasing number of studies pointing the finger at processed foods a little bit, and the role they play in many modern diseases, its impact is largely ignored or intentionally minimized. And in contrast with the description I provided a few moments ago, this study does not provide or does not describe processed foods as loved by all, but instead they say that ultra processed foods are industrial formulations made by deconstructing whole foods into chemical constituents, altering them and recombining them with additives into products that are alternatives to fresh and minimally processed foods and freshly prepared meals. So they took a slightly different path there. For many Western countries, processed foods account for roughly, I think they say like 25% of the daily calorie count to as much as 60% of the daily calorie count. There was a French study that found that a 10% increase in processed food consumption was associated with a higher rate of overall cardiovascular disease, coronary heart disease, and cerebrovascular disease. A study out of Spain found that a higher consumption of ultra-processed foods, which in this study's eyes would be 4 more servings a day, was associated with a 62% increased risk of all-cause mortality compared with lower consumptions of processed food, which would be about 2 servings a day. And while both the French and Spanish studies were just observational, it is the latest in a trend of studies that paint the story or paint the picture that processed foods, no matter what it says on the box, are allegedly depriving our bodies of the unadulterated minerals and vitamins present in natural foods. Now, I am not someone who can criticize what other people eat. All I can do is share how I go about making my food choices. First and foremost, I eat out at least once or twice a week, and I just assume that no matter where I go or what I order, there's going to be some ingredients that's just better off that I not know that they're in my food. I assume it's going to be bad for me, no matter how fancy that restaurant is. To combat that, the last few months, I've set a goal to cook more of my meals at home, and I've been fairly successful in that regard. In fact, this last week, I wasn't as good as I had been in the past few weeks, and I ate a lot, or I bought way too many pre-cooked meals that I could just, heat up. And that week of eating those pre-baked meals and of going out to restaurants, I noticed a change in my body. In fact, I noticed that I was putting on a few pounds. And one other thing I want to point out, when I cook at home, I'm not afraid of carbs or fat. Like, give me my sprouted flour, give me my butter, give me my lard. I am here for that. But yet, when I was eating those pre-cooked meals that, intentionally avoided fats like those that I just mentioned, I was putting on weight despite the fact that I was still working out 5 days a week. And I also want to mention that those meals that I bought, I would buy the meals that I would think would be the healthiest. And though generally those healthier the meals, the less saturated fat they have, they're usually lower carb, but I was still putting on weight. So when I cooked my own meals, with rice or with homemade pasta, or tossed a little butter, or maybe saute something in lard, my weight was stable. But when I ate out or heated up those pre-cooked meals, I just noticed that a change in my weight in just a week. That's a little curious, isn't it? So to close, let me tell you the one rule that I really follow. Or I guess my internal dialogue when I go grocery shopping. If I'm buying a food item, I ask myself, will this food item still be consumable 1 week from now? If it will be, I usually don't buy it. I'm Nicks-Erickson, and I'll see you next week.